cables, needles, cables. Hello and welcome to the Kuriaknits podcast. My name is Erin and I'm so glad that you've joined me today. If you are a new visitor, then welcome, and if you're a returning viewer, then welcome back. You may notice I am in a different location today. Welcome to a recording studio. I am still though recording on my iPhone because the microphones in this beautiful room are just not working for me, but I decided to book out this space because I woke up this morning. It's the only time this week I have to film this thing, and they are drilling on concrete in my building, which isn't the most fun and peaceful of sounds to hear. So I decided to save your ears and save my own ears and book out this beautiful space in my local library, and they offer beautiful recording rooms, instruments, all sorts of stuff for free. I really am amazed by the programs that my library has to offer, and I feel very lucky to live in this city. That said, this obviously isn't the most aesthetic of spaces. It's coming up gray on camera, but these sound panels are actually green. So I guess they kind of fit with the theme of my channel a little bit, but I guess it doesn't matter if they're not going to show up anyways. But yeah, I hope you'll forgive the lack of aesthetics in my background in order to have some peace and quiet while I'm filming. But regardless, I hope that you have a warm drink and some crafting to keep you company while you watch this, and I'm just so glad that you're here. If you want to keep up with me in the downtime between videos, you can find me on Instagram and on Ravelry. I am Kuriaknits on both of those platforms. And if you're interested in anything that I talk about in this podcast, I have left all the links below. You can find links to most of the yarns that I talk about, and definitely all of the projects that I am working on. And there are quite a lot of projects that I've been working on. That said, I've been a bit more of a monogamous knitter as of the past week. I'm someone that struggles with anxiety, have for most of my life, and it's just really hit me hard in the past couple, maybe week or so. And so if you're also dealing with that, I am with you. I sympathize, and just know that there's better days around the corner. I woke up this morning and the sun was finally shining. It was in the positive degrees, which is a huge blessing. We had a bout of negative 18 weather here, hopefully the last throes of winter, and it just really got me down. And sometimes you can't control those things, but you just get up and you live another day, and things get a little bit better. So I just know that I'm so glad that you're here, and I'm so glad that you're hanging out with me today. And I'm very excited to talk about knitwear. Knitwear is kind of my safe space, and it's a place that I know that I'll feel okay in. So I'm really glad that you're here to join me. So let's get into finished objects. I kind of went on a kick where I wanted to finish as many of my FOs as possible, and the first one I am wearing. So this is the Kenley Pullover by Fine Fibre Co. And I've shown this many times in the podcast before, so it won't be new to you, but I finally finished the second sleeve. So just for proof, I have 2 sleeves. Finally. It took so long because you can probably tell the sleeves, I've got like a weird thread here. Ignore that, but the sleeves are in double moss stitch, and that just takes forever. I feel like this stitch kind of eats yarn, but it's kind of like ribbing, so it just takes a little bit of while. There's a lot of purling involved. That said, I think it's probably my favorite stitch looks wise, which probably doesn't bode well for my future of knitting if I like despise knitting it but love wearing it. So we'll see what the future holds. Actually, one of my whips has a good chunk of this stitch in it, so it never ends. But that said, I love this sweater. It has blocked out beautifully. You may have heard me saying that I was a little bit worried about how short it was. It's a cropped sweater, so it's supposed to be short, but it was coming up quite cropped, and this is actually just the perfect length. It hits me just below the waist, just below where pants usually hit, and that is perfect. And the blocking kind of took out a lot of the wonkiness of it. I do think I miscounted somewhere in where to put these cables, because I can tell, and I'm sure no one else will be able to tell, that the sweater sways this way a little bit. It's fine if I like place it down, but I can tell that it wants to go like this, and I don't know how I did that. But I have to be generous with myself and keep reminding myself that I've been knitting for less than a year, and it's an all over cabled and like odd stitch pattern sweater, and I did the dang thing. So I'm going to be generous with myself and just call this sweater a win. I love it. I think it fits super, super well. I'm just sad that this color is very out of season, and I don't really know how to wear it in spring. So I might be putting this in the closet until fall. I'm sure warmer weather is coming anyways. So I won't have to feel as guilty about that at all. But I think that this color for fall winter is going to be just perfect. It's one of my favorites. It's actually my husband's favorite color as well, so I guess that's a win for me. But I just find that it suits my complexion quite well, because I've got like pinky undertones, and it brings it out, but it doesn't make me look red, if that makes any sense at all. But this pattern is also, it was a test knit, it is also out now, and so I would highly recommend checking it out if you're interested. Again, links will be below, but I just think it is such a lovely pattern, and it's also like a beautiful way to get into some light cabling if you don't want an all over cabled sweater, but still want the cabled effect as it's coming right down the middle here. So highly recommend this one. I had knit this out of Knit Picks palette, and Knit Picks, whew, it's a lace weight. It's a lace weight alpaca. It's gone. I will put it up here. But I love the way that that turned out. So it's 2 of Knit Picks palette, and then you can kind of see in here the thread of the alpaca coming through. And I just love the way that it kind of created a marling effect without being too in your face. And the strand of alpaca is just a little bit lighter. Oh, you can see it there a little bit more. So yeah, I just love the way that that turned out. And I am going to talk about some Knit Picks yarn a little bit later on. But I will say, if you are choosing between Knit Picks palette, holding Knit Picks palette double, or Knit Picks Wool of the Andes, I would choose Knit Picks palette holding double any day of the week. I think that the fabric that this has created is beautiful, it's drapey, and it's affordable, and those are all things that I love to see in my knitwear. So yeah, very excited about this finally being off the needles, and I have another FO to show. Okay, so my next FO and the last of my test knits, thank God I need a break, I think, is this delightfully beautiful cardigan from Evergreen knits. I don't know if I'm going to be able to show this well. Maybe if I do up the top button, it will do a little bit better. So I have a chronic lack of cardigans in my wardrobe, and so I jumped on the chance to both support a designer that I really admire and respect, and have come to call a friend, which is just such a blessing in my life, and also knit a cardigan that I thought was really pretty. So it looks like this. It's got beautiful pockets. The color blocking was out of necessity and isn't in the original pattern, but I've seen lots of other people do color blocking as well, so you can absolutely do that. But you have this beautiful flower motif on the pocket here, and I just think it turned out really nice. So this pattern was a test. I think the test knit is due in about a week, and so I'm assuming that the pattern will be out shortly after. I haven't seen many people having any problems with it, so I don't think that there'll be as much to amend. And I don't think I mentioned the name. I believe this is called the Everbloom cardigan, and it's by Evergreen Knits, Tess at Evergreen Knits, and she just creates some beautiful designs. She's a newer knitwear designer, and so I love to support newer designers. This cardigan is knit out of, this is, oh my gosh, this is what happens when I get into a new location, is I just can't remember a darn thing. Rowan Simply Softest merino wool. It's merino wool. It's a 1 ply in this minty color, and then these are from Michaels. They are 100% eco polyester, and the reason I got these is because I ran out of this Rowan yarn and I'd gotten it at a discount bin, and you cannot find it anywhere anymore. And so I needed a 1 ply yarn that looked similar, and this polyester did the trick. And you know what? I'm not mad at it. I think I talked about this in my last podcast, but the only thing that bothers me between these two is that the Rowan is matte and the polyester is a little bit shiny. I don't know if you can see that, but we got some shine going on. So yeah, I really love the construction of this cardigan. So you knit the back and then pick up the front, knit the panels, pick up in the round, or not in the round, it's cardigan, but pick up all of it, go back and forth, and then you just knit the sleeves. And I think that the way that it was done was really clever. Instead of doing ribbed edges, it's all garter stitch edging, which, to be honest, I still think I prefer ribbed edging, but it was nice to have something a little bit different. And I do quite like the way that it looks on the button band. I think that that gives a really cool effect. You can see my bad edging or sewing work here. Lovely. But yeah, so that's this cardigan. I don't know if I have too much else to say about it. I will say that it's very big and chunky and like fluffy, and I don't think it would fit under many of my coats, and for that reason this is definitely more of an office sweater for me. I have been keeping it by my desk and it has been serving the purpose, and I really just love having it. I love having just a cozy sweater to wrap myself up in, and yeah, should I have the right yarn for it, I would consider making this again. But I will say I would lean towards softer yarns for this pattern than a rougher yarn. I think that the design really does well with like squishy, beautiful yarns. It calls for a bulky weight, and I considered making it in, I have a lot of Alaflas sitting around, and I think that would have been a mistake. So if you are looking to make this design, I would highly recommend going for a super soft yarn, and I don't think you'll regret it. I really love the way that this has turned out. We're really flying through this, but now we're on to whips, and I think I'll have a lot more to talk about there. Oh, I just realized that there's one more thing that I wanted to talk about before whips. So if you'll recall, I was working on a cotton version of the Bina v-neck sweater that I was going to turn into a t-shirt. I will see if I can put a photo for you here. And I talked about it in the last podcast and the struggle I'd had with this test knit, and I ultimately decided to frog that project. Part of the reason is I did the neckline wrong, which was on me in the center. It's kind of a v-neck, it has a centerpiece. It was a little off to the side and it was driving me nuts. And the sweater, I kid you not, was almost done. I had finished the full body and the v-neck, and I just had to clean up the edging. And I, when I was cutting out the stitches on the neckline, the way that I had sewn it in, it was just easier to cut it out. I cut the wrong stitch and I ended up cutting a giant hole like right in the top of the t-shirt, and I rage quit the project. It was not giving me joy. I would have to do some like crazy mending, or heaven forbid rip back that far, which like the idea of that, I just can't do it. So I ripped the whole thing, frogged it all, and cut the yarn for a future project. So that is where that Bina V-neck sweater slash t-shirt ended up. And you know what, I don't regret it. That project never really gave me that much joy to begin with, and we are just going to soldier on, and that's just the way it's gonna be. A project that is giving me a lot of joy is this. That is no way to show this off. So this is another cardigan. Look how beautiful she is. I don't know the way to show off cardigans very well. So this is, and I will probably be saying this wrong, the Tähkä cardigan from Sari Nordlund. So as you may remember, I did a test knit for Sari Nordlund earlier in this month, or maybe it was in February. And as the thanks for doing one of her test knits, she gives you one of her patterns for free. And I selected this one. It's the Tähkä cardigan. It came out at the same time as the marzipan pullover, which I tested, and I knew that this cardigan would be the perfect match for this yarn, and I am happy to say that I was right. And this project has just been filling me with so much joy lately. So the Tähkä cardigan is a cardigan without buttonholes. It's just kind of open. It's all knit using the same millimeter needle the whole time, which is kind of interesting. And the way that you make the band is using ribbing, and then the rest of it is just in stockinette. And then you pick up the sleeves, and they have this amazing detail on the top, which is like a slip stitch that goes all the way down, and then the sleeves are decreased from the top. And this shape of the sleeves is what sold me. I just love the way that this looks on. I will put in a photo of Sari wearing it, and it just captured my attention. I just loved the way that it looked, and I was going back and forth on whether this color would be best as a pullover or a cardigan, and I just said, you know what, you are being too precious with this yarn. You just need to go for it, and I'm so glad that I did. I'm hoping to have this done before I leave for England in about a week, and I think that's definitely doable. I just have one more sleeve to go, and yeah, I'm so thrilled at the way that this is turning out. And actually it is really not eating up as much yarn as I thought it was going to be, which I guess is a blessing. So I am using my favorite yarn of all time, which is Project Weekend Lowell. In this, looks like this. It is a sustainable brand out of Vancouver. I discovered it in a little shop in Collingwood where they were selling little kits of this yarn, and I had picked up a one-off skein and fell in love. So as a Christmas gift to myself, I ordered a sweater's quantity of this yarn, and I showed it, I think, on my first ever podcast, and I was a little bit concerned about the color because this color comes up more yellow in real life than it does on the website. But I find that actually in most lighting, this does actually come up more brown orange than in natural light. So if any amount of cloud, somehow this thing looks way more orange than it does yellow. It is the strangest color, and I don't know how to describe it. So this yarn is 65% fine Peruvian Highland wool and 35% Peruvian superfine alpaca, and it is just divine to feel. They partner with farms in Peru, and it's beautiful. It's a bulky weight yarn. It is the only yarn that they sell, and they have 9 colors in it. I know a lot of people are looking for substitutes for the petite wool and the mare wool from oh my gosh, We Are Knitters. After the whole We Are Knitters Zara debacle, which I'm not going to get into here, but I'll leave some links below if that is something that you're interested in learning more about. And I think that this is an excellent substitute for that, albeit definitely more expensive. So each ball of yarn I think goes for around 22 to 27, somewhere in there, Canadian dollars. And I'm pretty sure the petite wool and the Mary wool goes for just under that. And the other difference is that this has definitely more plies in it than those wools. Those wools are very lightly spun, but I think that the result is very similar and the gauge is almost exact. And so I think if you were looking for a substitution that's a little bit more sustainable and fits with your values a little bit more, I think that this is an excellent thing to consider. I think the other difference is that this has some alpaca content, so it'll be just slightly drapier, but I never see drape as a problem. So I don't know if I have anything else to say about this cardigan other than the fact I am super excited to just get it on. I think it's going to block out really, really beautifully as well. The sleeve looks kind of funny when I hold it up like that, eh? Anyway, it also smells really good. So I've only used, for this whole cardigan, I've only used just under 4 balls of yarn, and I have 6 balls of this stuff. So I think I'm only gonna end up using about 5 balls of yarn, and then I'll have 1 left over, and the possibilities are endless. So that's very exciting. I also made 1 amendment to the pattern. When knitting this, I decided to knit this in 8mm needles instead of 6mm needles, which is what I recommended. I really like the fabric that this yarn makes in an 8mm gauge, and I met gauge with 7mm needles, went up to 8 in size down, and it is perfect. So not that I recommend doing that, playing fast and loose with your gauge, but it's worked out for me almost every time. So I'm not saying do it, but I'm also not saying don't do it. So anyway, I highly recommend the Tähkä cardigan, and I'm excited to show it to you when it's all done. You will hopefully be seeing this in travel vlogs in the very near future. This next work in progress is one that you will not have seen before unless you have stalked my Ravelry, because it has been on hold since probably around Christmas time, and that is because that's when I started working on a whole bunch of test knits, and this knit is very involved, but I keep on looking at it and admiring it, and so I'm pulling it out. I have not made any progress on my cardigan number 7 or on my Gayroop chunky sweater, so they're not going to be in this podcast, but I think once I finish that cardigan, those will be the next things on my list to finish. But those are both simple-ish patterns, and I needed something to exercise the brain a little bit more, and so I'm pulling this beauty out. Look at her. So this is the Snow Caucus, I'm definitely saying that wrong, sweater by Midori House. They are the same people that did the ranunculus, which you are likely to know, and it is a beautiful cabled sweater. There's cabling on the arms as well. And yes, our old friend Moss Stitch is back. So, there's some wonky stitches there. Can you see that? I caught it in the camera lens and I was like, oh, this look a little funky. I don't think they're actually a mistake. I think it just needs to be blocked out. It's just kind of sitting funny. The reason that I initially kind of went off this pattern is because you put the body on hold and knit the arms first, and you kind of have to knit the arms to a certain length so that you are able to attach it at the bottom, because you pick up these arm stitches. And I've seen people on Ravelry that just said F it and did the body and then picked up for the arms, and because of the way that the short rows are done on the arms, I just didn't feel confident enough to do that, and so they forced you to do the arms and then the body, which, as someone who is prone to sleeve island, it hit me a lot sooner than it would have otherwise. But I keep on looking at it because I keep on being like, oh, this would work amazing with this particular outfit, and then obviously I can't wear it because it looks like this. So I really want to get this done. I doubt I will get it done in time to wear really at all this year, but I think this is what I'm working on, going to like be my primary project next, because it actually is a bit lighter to have on my lap and to work on, and I just love this yarn and I love the way that this looks, and I really want to finish it. And if I leave it sitting around much longer, I'm going to forget how to read this pattern properly and where I was, because this pattern is like 67 pages long. It's kind of ridiculous. That said, the reason that it's that long is because it's incredibly size inclusive, so I'm not going to complain too much, but it does feel a little ridiculous when you're reading it and you're on page like 56 and you're like, I don't know how I got here. I don't know what I'm doing here, but I guess we're just going to carry on. So anyway, that's what this is looking like. I am knitting it in beautiful wool stock worsted by Blue Sky Fibres, and this is in the color Driftwood. Looks like this. This is a yarn that I actually really love, and I'm so glad to be working with, and I would love to work with again. And it is comparable to my beloved Cascade 220, but is just that little bit more of a higher quality. So it's 100% fine Highland wool, and the thing that I love about this is it comes in two different skein sizes. So you can get it in this size, which is 150 grams for 370 yards, or you can get it in 50 gram skeins. And I just love that you have that versatility to get the exact amount that you need for your project. The only thing that does worry me a little bit about that is I did end up getting a 50 gram skein for this project, but because of the skein sizes being different, they are from different dye lots. So I would just be careful about that. And I don't know if it's just my local yarn store, but they have way more colors of this in the 50 gram skeins than they do in the 150 gram skeins, which doesn't bother me too much because they have mostly all neutrals in the 150 gram skeins, which is what I'd almost always reach for anyways. But yeah, it's kind of weird how they don't have all of their selection in both sizes. So I would just be wary of that, but I will say that this yarn is incredibly soft for just fine Highland wool. And it's Peruvian wool too. So apparently I have a type. But yeah, I am just loving the way that this is knitting into this beautiful project. This is almost completely one of those 150 grams. So this is how far I got on one of those skeins. I have 3 of these and then one of the 50 skeins, and that should be enough for me. But I will say, because this is all cables and moss stitch, that this thing ate yarn. I remember being astonished of how much yarn it seemed to be eating for how far I was getting in the project. But I will hopefully have a little bit more to say about the knitting process of this when it's fresher on my mind next podcast, when I'm actually knitting on it a little bit more. But this is one that is definitely more of a finish knit, process knit, and object knit, process knit, and guys, I'm losing it. I'm excited to have this sweater is what I'm saying. Okay, let's move on to the next one. I'm sorry. Okay, so as I mentioned, I've been having a little bit of rough go lately, and so I went back to my safe place, and that is, of course, the Musselburgh hat by Ysolda, which I am probably not saying correctly at all, and it is a top-down hat. So you can see the increases on the top there, and then you basically just knit this tube and then put it in inside of each other, and you get a beautiful hat. I am knitting this out of Estelle worsted, and this is left over from my throw over sweater from Andrea Mowry. and I'll put a photo of that in here. And I had this left over and I figured I'd make a hat out of it because I think red hats are really having a moment and I don't have one. So I am knitting this in the largest size the Musselburgh hat offers on 5mm needles, and so it's going to be a very thick hat, but it is also being a very quick knit. This is about an hour and a half of knitting and I got this far. So I think there's maybe an hour and a half left of knitting on this. It has been my meeting knit and my car knit and my panic attack knit, and that has been great for me. I am going to cast another one of these on, I think, to travel with to England because it'll just be an easy knit to travel with, but I will be hopefully making a video about packing and going to England very shortly, but I don't imagine it will be out until after my trip. So expect to see that in maybe 2.5 weeks from now. But yeah, I'm thrilled with the way that this is coming out. I love these hats. This is my third one. I anticipate casting these on forevermore into the future because I just love the way that they're constructed. I love how easy they are to knit on, and I love the that the possibilities are just endless with this hat. You can end it off with some ribbing, you can carry on, and it just looks so modern. It just looks like such like a beautiful modern, you can make it look homemade, you can make it look store-bought, and honestly I don't know if I'll ever need any other hat pattern ever, which is probably too dramatic to say, but looks like a puppet when I hold it. But yes, favorite hat. And if you don't have this pattern, I cannot recommend it highly enough. It gives you, you basically start off and you choose the yarn that you want and the needle size that you want. And you start off by casting on here, and then you gauge swatch as you go. And then based on the gauge that you get as you are expanding your hat, it tells you how much to expand it by how many stitches. And so it's genius. You don't have to gauge swatch at all. You don't have to guess. And every single one that I made, which is a bit dramatic to say, I've only made 2, but they both fit wonderfully and they are definitely my most worn hats. So highly, highly, highly recommend this pattern. You can use it with lace to worsted weight yarn, and it's just beautiful. It's just a wonderful hat, so highly recommend. I have one more project to show you today. So the next project I'm going to share is something a little bit different for me. It is crochet, and I am by no means a crocheter, but I do know some basic stitches in crochet, and I was starting to feel a little bit guilty at the amount of acrylic that I have accrued over the past year, and I wanted to make it into something, really anything. So I decided to make it into a very simple blanket. So I cast on these squares. So these squares are cast on 20 stitches, do double crochet for 14 rows, and then cast off. And it just makes a very simple square. And this has been very mindless for me. It's very quick for me. I am holding worsted weight yarn double with a 10mm crochet hook, which is a US size 15. It's a very basic crochet hook. Got it at Michael's. I mostly have crochet hooks to help me with knitting, but I figured I would just give some crochet a go, and honestly guys, I'm kind of loving it. It's going to be a very basic blanket, but it's a blanket. And how long would it take me for me to knit a blanket? I don't even want to know. So a lot of this is the Knit Picks Bravo worsted yarn that I got in my Knit Picks haul. And so I have 1 square, 2 square, almost 3 square, I ran out, 4 square, 5 square. So that is, I think, just 3. I think that's 3 balls of yarn right here. And I have a whole lot more to work with. So I brought a few of the skeins with me, so you can just see what I'm working with. This is Knit Picks Brava worsted, and I have some really funky colors in this, and I'm not sold on the colors, so this might also become a dyeing experiment, where I think I might try to dye this a darker green and dye this a darker blue. And if I do decide to do that, I might make a video out of it, just my adventures in trying to dye things, and it might be a total fail. But I figure that while these squares are still squares, they'd be easy to put into a pot and dye them. I'm okay with these neutral colors, but who knows, we could have an adventure with this. I've just been really enjoying the process of crocheting these. I find it's a nice TV knit, a nice mindless knit, and my plan is to somehow put them together and just make a very simple blanket. I think I'm going to crochet them together and then do a border around it. So if you have any recommendations of the best way to do that, let me know, but I will probably just be me experimenting. I do find that crochet is easier to experiment with than knitting is. But I know it's a very simple stitch, but I quite like the way that they're turning out, and yeah. Looking forward to having a crochet blanket. I don't really have any homemade blankets. I do have some quilts that were handed down to me, which are cherished, but I think that this would also, it might even be in a summer blanket because of the holes. Like once it's blocked out, it's going to be quite holey. But maybe acrylic wouldn't be so nice for summer. If all else fails, my dog will be getting a new blanket, and he loves blanket. This dog will like pile all of the pillows on top of each other on the couch and then put a blanket over it. Like he'll be like creating a nest, and then he'll go and climb up on top of all of them. So yeah, he's a big fan of cushion, and I think he might love this. This might be going to him at the end of it, but I would do anything for that dog, so that is a-okay with me. So yeah, if you're interested in more crochet content, let me know. I don't know how much crocheting I'll be doing in the future, but I love making squares, so I could just make squares forever, and I have a lot of acrylic to use up. So anyway, blanket. Okay, so that's it for whips from me, but I do have some acquisitions to show. But before that, I am going to introduce a new segment called Should I Frog, which sounds like I should have a theme song too, but I do not. So as I mentioned before, this has been my first year ever of knitting, and because of that, we live and we learn, and I have not been afraid to frog many projects, but there are 3 things in particular that I've been holding on to for a while that I am considering giving the frog. So I'm going to show them to you and talk you through my thought process. The first of which is this sweater. It is my Weekender by Andrea Mowry, and I love this sweater. I actually really love the drape on it. I really like a lot of things about the sweater, the color especially. I hate the neckline. I despise the neckline. It is a boat neck, and so this just sits like right up on your neck, and it feels like it's squeezing my neck. And as someone with asthma, that's like even more a feeling I really don't appreciate, and I never ever reach for it for that reason. And I just love the color of this yarn. It's one of my favorite colors, and I just feel like I could get so much more use out of this if it was knitted as something else. But at the same time, it's like a really nice sweater. So I don't know, guys. This is the question. Should I frog? I mean, if I'm questioning it, the answer is probably yes, right? So this, as I mentioned before, this is made out of Knit Picks worsted, wool of the Andes worsted, and I will say that it has softened up quite a bit with the few wears that I have gotten out of this, and so I have faith that this is going to soften up even more as I wear it. At first it was a little bristly and it just had no business being as bristly as it is, but yeah, what do you guys think? Do you have experiences with the Weekender? Do you think I could maybe like frog it back and somehow like knit this neckline a little bit differently? It's not even that it's like tight, it's just I just don't think I like this neckline, and it was my first sewn bind off, and I had to do it a couple of times to make sure that it was like wide enough, and I think it is wide enough, and the whole sweater is like stretchy. It's just, I just don't think I can tolerate that kind of neckline, which is, I mean, a good thing to learn, but I don't know. Have any of you guys knit the Weekender? Do you have advice? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Should it be gifted maybe? Because I think it's a good sweater. There's no mistakes. What do you think I should do? I look like a Christmas. I don't want Christmas right now. I'm craving summer. But yeah. The next thing I am considering frogging is this beauty. This is a vest number 3 from My Favorite Things Knitwear, and it is knit out of Drops Wish, which is a yarn that I love very much. My problem with this is it was one of my first knits ever, and every time I look at it, I can tell. So you might be able to see, where is it? Up here. I just like gain a stitch, and it happens again down here where I just gain a stitch, and when I was first doing it I obviously didn't realize, and now it's all I can see. And I just think that I can make a different vest that I'd wear a lot more, and I actually wore this a lot, surprisingly, in the summer with skirts, because I think it's just the perfect length that it hits right where the skirts do. And so I actually really like this, and I wear it a lot, or I wore it a lot last summer. I just don't know if I'd reach for it now that I can see all the problems with it, and I'm annoyed, and it would honestly be such a quick knit to re-knit it over. My other concern though is that because I have worn it so much, I can see it in some areas, it looks like it's felted just a little bit, and I wonder if frogging this is going to be the death of this sweater. And this is a yarn that I just adore. Drops Wish is like the older sister of Drops Air. Like, what was I doing? I just like lost a whole ass row there. Anyway, do I keep this as a relic of how far I've come? Or do I re-knit this beautiful yarn, like look at that color, into something I'd actually wear a lot more? I have to frog it, don't I? I think the answer with all of these is just frog it, but it kind of hurts, you know? One more thing. So this is one that you'll recognize. It is, of course, the Bina V-neck sweater. And okay, so if you remember my adventure with this one, the pattern was originally knit written in a way where the neckline was way too big. The designer took feedback, she amended the neckline. I think the sweater pattern is coming out now. It's by Gregoria Fibres. It's a great pattern. I've seen a lot of others be very successful at knitting it. I was not as much, but I do think it's lovely, and I had salvaged it by just knitting up the middle. Fine. I've worn it a couple times, and this yarn is so itchy that I cannot stand it. It is the Knit Picks Andean silk that, if you'll remember, I drove to Burlington for it because I got it secondhand and it was such a good deal. And it is a wool silk alpaca blend, and you would think with that blend of yarn it would be the softest darn thing that you've ever put on your body. And you can tell, like, the silk content, the alpaca, it's drapey as heck. the wool that they put in here must have been the scratchiest darn wool. And I'm not sensitive. Like, I can wear Lopi and be absolutely fine. This thing irritates me so much. And I don't know what to do about it. And I can't wear it with t-shirts underneath because it's a V-neck. And so I'm considering frocking this and maybe pairing it with like a Sari alpaca to try and soften out this yarn, because I can't, it's driving me nuts. And I'm so upset because I actually quite like it. You can see that thread I just didn't knit in. So yeah, that has been Frog, or not Frog. I don't think I named it that at the beginning, but that is what I'm naming it now. And please let me know your opinions below. Are you a frogger? Are you a bit of a hoarder? I think I'm somewhere in between the two, and I could definitely use some advice. I'm gonna end up frogging all of them, aren't I? I think I am. Anyway, let's move on to acquisitions. If you saw my last video, I went to the Hamilton Fibre Festival last weekend, and I filmed a little bit while I was there, and I filmed a haul afterwards. So if you're interested in what I got at the market, I'll leave a link to the video above. But I have gotten a couple other things in the meantime, and yes, I must be stopped. But this one I couldn't pass up. So this is a Facebook Marketplace find, and someone was selling 10 skeins of this for $20, and it is a vintage knitting vintage yarn from Eton. And if you are Canadian, you might know this brand. It was like a big department store that I think closed down in maybe the late 80s. And I had no idea that they sold yarn, but look how vintage this thing is. I could not pass that up. So it is superwash wool knitting worsted. It's called Coordinates, and it's the Lady Fair line from Eton. And this has, it doesn't even say how much is in here, other than it's pure virgin wool, and the color's 3319. So yeah, it looks like that. I jumped on this not only because it's just an incredible vintage find, it was an amazing price for wool. I've got a sweaters quantity for $20. I mean, that's kind of unheard of. But also, if you'll remember, I had gotten this mohair, and I think that they'd work perfectly together. I was looking for a way to use this. I thought I'd use it on its own, but I'd much rather hold it with this. And I don't know what I'm going to make with it yet, but I know that it's going to be beautiful. And I love being able to work with thrifted yarn. It means that I'm not putting out more resources into the world. And also, like, how cool is that? I'm not as thrilled that it's superwash, but I mean, beggars can't be choosers, and I'm just thrilled that I have this in my hands. Part of me hopes that it doesn't use up all of the wool, whatever sweater I choose, because I do kind of want to keep one like on display. Like, look at that. It must be from at least the 80s. Like, it doesn't even have a barcode on it. And when a barcode's come into effect, like the 60s? I don't even know. It's beautiful though. I might try to do some more research on this and see if I can find out kind of a year. I did do a little bit of research on Ravelry, and some people have skeins of this lying around, but they seem to be quite rare, and it seems to be very much a Canadian thing. So if you have any of these, let me know. But yeah, I'm just really pleased with this find. And then I wasn't planning on doing any other shopping. I had actually made a promise to my husband that I would only buy yarn outside of Canada from like the market onwards, because as I may have mentioned, I'm going to London in about a week, and I will be doing a video exploring some of the yarn stores there, and I do plan on getting some yarn. And then I'm in New York at the end of the month, and then I'm going to Europe again, and it's just like a bit chaotic, and I do want to get yarn while I'm overseas. So I'm trying to be economical because there's only so much I can knit, but at the same time, like, too many opportunities. I have to get yarn where I'm going, because it's so much cheaper than shipping it to Canada and dealing with customs. that said, I went to a local farmers market, the St. Jacob's Farmers Market, which is a local tourist attraction, but it's also just local to me. They have a lot of amazing food vendors, but also like various crafts, and local artisans set up shop there, and you're able to go and look around. And I had went with a friend of mine this past weekend, and I unexpectedly to me stumbled across a beautiful alpaca farmer booth, and they had some stunning alpaca yarns. And I told myself, no, you are not going to get the yarn. And then I felt the yarn, and I got the yarn. This is the softest yarn I have ever felt in my entire life. Like, it's like a cloud. It's like the softest pillow you've ever felt. It's divine. And I got 2 skeins from them, and I have no regrets. So this is 100% alpaca, and it's 240 yards. This is a worsted weight, and it's Serenity Surrey alpacas that are in Canada. So I got this brown color in their worsted weight, and no, I have no idea what I'm gonna make with these. If they go unmade and I just feel these for my entire life, I don't think I'd be mad about it. For the reason that they're so soft, I'm thinking maybe mids, but we'll see. I also need something that can take drape, because like there's no integrity to this yarn. It's so beautiful and drapey, and I don't want to hold it with anything else because it's the softest yarn I ever felt, but I also have no idea what to do with it. And is that irresponsible? Yes, but I also have no regrets. And that's all I'm going to say on that. And anyway, I got this other one because it's even softer somehow. It is a number 6 bulky weight yarn. It is 90% alpaca and 10% tencel. So it does have just a little bit more integrity to it. That said, not a lot, but just a little bit. And it is 110 yards, and is a 2-ply yarn. And this again, Serenity Surrey is what it's called. And the lady in the booth was really lovely. They primarily sold socks and hats and mitts that were knit out of their yarns, but they also had a few yarns on display, and I'm so glad they did. And it's local to me, which is so cool. So I'm definitely going to have to go back when I'm not restricting my yarn buying, because they had some beautiful, beautiful yarn options. And I have a feeling I'm going to knit with these and be addicted. That's just dangerous territory. They also have a website where you can buy their yarns. So yeah, for full transparency, they were $30 each, and I'm just so pleased. They're so beautiful. And the colors. I don't know if I can do mitts for both of them. Maybe a hat and a mitt. Hats and mitts. I don't know. So that's all the yarn content I have. I will say that the next couple weeks, I don't know how many videos will be coming out. I leave in just over a week, and I'll be filming stuff in London, but obviously it'll take some time for me to edit it, and I probably will not be editing on the go. So if you don't see a video from me in the next 2 weeks, my apologies, but you can always keep up with me on Instagram if you're interested. I will try and post as much as I can on there. And I'll definitely be visiting some yarn shops, which I'm really excited for while I'm on the go. I hope you all are having a wonderful week. Leave in the comments what you are knitting on down below, and I hope to see you next time. Hopefully I'll have some more whips to show. I'm hoping to finish up some of these projects that I've been holding on to. My goal for summer is to become a little bit more of a monogamous knitter, because I think that's the way that my brain goes, and I feel like I'm giving myself a little bit more anxiety with having so much going on. So yeah, summer knits to come, and hopefully a little bit more of monogamous knitting to come. But anyways, I hope you're having a wonderful week, and I will see you next time. Bye!